the Planning Commission meeting of Monday, September 21st to order. Please call the roll.
Okay. Commissioner Bach?
Here.
Commissioner Hawley?
Here.
Commissioner Gentes?
Here.
Commissioner Chorin?
Here.
Commissioner Jim Schaefer?
Here.
Commissioner Lemke?
Here.
I can't tell if Commissioner Becky Schaefer's on yet. We'll keep an eye out for her. Alderman Parrish?
Here.
And Mayor Worth?
Here. We have more than a quorum, so we're good. The first item on our agenda is the approval of the minutes from July 27th. Is there a motion to approve? And Commissioner Schaefer has joined us, if you could let the record reflect that. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second? Come on, somebody.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion, comments, questions, corrections? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 The ayes have it. The first order of business is a public hearing for the Superb Health LLC, which is looking to open a personal fitness studio at the property at 10650 North Bear Road. It's a conditional use grant approval request. Is there a motion to go into public hearing?
So moved. Second.
Second. We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
We are in the public hearing, but nobody registered to speak. So is there a motion to close the public hearing?
That's me, Nick Lynch, the owner.
Well, typically, I would call on you when we get to the actual item as opposed to the public hearing part, if that's okay.
Oh, okay. Thanks. I've never done this before, so bear with me.
No problem.
Thank
So
you.
can we have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved. Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Staff, a quick report, although this looks fairly straightforward.
Yeah, Mayor, this would have gone on the consent agenda except for it required a public hearing. So basically the proposal is for a 1,500 square foot fitness center in an existing multi-tenant building in the business park. The Planning Commission has approved this type of use before in the business park. Staff believes that it is compatible and harmonious with the surrounding properties. The hours of operation are proposed from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. Staff did look at the parking calculation for all users and tenants of the building, and the parking requirement is met with the 45 parking spaces on site. So staff does recommend approval of the conditional use grant.
Thank you. Mr. Nick, I don't see your last name and I don't have a note that says it. Is there anything you'd like to add? Although I will tell you, this looks like it probably will get passed without any issue, so you don't need to give us a long sales pitch.
Yeah, I'll just add that I do serve, my clientele's primarily the North Shore, and we live in Grafton, so for us it feels like a natural move to want to be in Ozaukee County. So I think that what we'll bring to the community will be positive, considering the people that come to our gym and the service that we offer. And our plan is to come in and make the place a little bit nicer than it already is, and provide more of that good energy to the community.
Well, I thank you for locating in Mequon. Is there a motion to approve the application?
So moved.
There's a second?
Second.
Any questions, comments, discussion, suggestions? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Fairly painless. Congratulations. Thank you for, Mr. Alderman Parrish.
Well, congratulations. I just need to recuse myself for item 2B.
Okay. Well, congratulations and thank you for coming to Mequon.
Thank
The
you
next
very
item on the agenda, is Shiraz Wines of Wisconsin. The applicant seeking conditional use grant approval to allow warehousing and office operations at 1115 West Lebaugh Road. Is there a motion to go into public hearing?
So moved.
Somebody? Second? I heard a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? No. Nobody registered to speak, so can we have a motion to close the public hearing?
So
We
moved.
have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Staff, who's taking this one?
I will, Mayor. Thank you. This is approval for warehousing on the Bell Road. It is a wholesale liquor and wine distributor, and they sell directly to businesses with no walk-in traffic. They will occupy 5,500 square feet of the 2,800 square foot building, and it is zone B4 Business Park, and it allows housing as a conditional use. So staff did look at the finding your reports, the findings when considering whether a conditional use is, when analyzing a conditional use application, and we did find that the proposed use is compatible with the area and the zoning. All the activities will take place inside the building and will be monitored by staff. The applicant did indicate that traffic to this site is limited to 2 to 3 weekly deliveries. Outgoing traffic consists of 2 to 3 small cargo deliveries, loading at 5 to 7 a.m.
We're kind of losing you, Buffalo.
3 to 6
I think we're losing you. Unfortunately, I think we're losing you.
Surrounding properties are also zone B4, and warehousing can be considered compatible. Other uses in the building include Ozaki. Oh. Okay, maybe also.
I'll tell you what, we're kind of losing you.
Am I still lagging?
Yeah, you are. So we'll see if anybody has any questions. Why don't we? We'll cut your presentation off because most of it was in the. I assume it was in the packet and people read the packet. Does anybody have any questions regarding this application? Is the applicant on the line?
I am, yep, I'm right here.
Mr. Schraith, welcome. Thank you for looking to locate in Mequon.
Thank you.
Any questions for staff? Is there a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Is there a second? I heard a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Again, thank you for moving your business to Mequon. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Look forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you. The next item is Ryan Companies is seeking a conditional use grant and building site approval to allow for a single-story hospital of approximately 17,000 square feet at 11421 Northport Washington Road. Is there a motion to go into public hearing?
So moved.
And I heard a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Again, nobody signed up to speak on this item, so can we have a motion to close the public hearing? I heard a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 The ayes have it. This is we've granted this conditional use grant in the past. I'm assuming, staff, this is on the same terms as it was previously granted.
Yes, in fact, we've a lot of the conditions in the original approval were satisfied, so we were pretty close to actually issuing a building permit on this, and then it sat and went beyond the year requirement, so we had to bring it all back for you. But everything is pretty much the same as it was 2 years ago when it was in front of the commission.
I take it that a couple of the faces I see are the applicants, but any questions from the commission? Commissioner Bach.
This is just open for any questions on this? Is that
Yes.
correct? Yeah, I mean, it's good to have another medical facility in Mequon, in my opinion, although it's like 3 emergency rooms in a short distance. So this one looks a little bit different than typical ones. I just had a question about, what if there is a real emergency and somebody needs to be transferred by the Flight for Life helicopter or something, or how is that transfer going to be made, and what will happen there?
Yeah, we had a pretty lengthy discussion about this last time, and any serious higher level emergencies will be transported to the same areas.
Got it. Thank you.
I saw Commissioner Schaefer's hand up. but you need to unmute. There you go.
Thanks, Mayor. I think I understand this, but I wanted to confirm just because I know that this property does abut neighbors' residential area to the west, but it doesn't look like the parking's all on the north and the east, and it doesn't look like there's any lighting on the west side that would be facing those residential areas from what I can tell. Jack, can you confirm that, or someone?
Yeah, I mean, we have a luminaire plan that's in there and there's no overflow to the neighboring properties. They also show a 6-foot fence along that west property line with the adjacent neighborhoods. That was there last time. It was done proactively, and you're right, they did shift the building as far as they could south to keep anything away from those
Away
residential.
from the west. Yep. Okay, thank you.
Anything else from the commission? Commissioner Parrish?
Yes, can you confirm this is a 12-month CUP? And I guess that's my question.
I'm not sure. It's a CUG that they have to start some level of construction within the 12-month period or lapses, but once they start construction and once it's a ongoing operation, they can remain indefinitely.
Okay, so they would have to come back for renewal in 12 months.
Yeah, if they don't start any construction or any work on this.
Okay, I'm supportive of the project still. I've said it when I was on planning commission last time. I could see better uses for the site, but I'm sure it's going to be a wonderful product, and hopefully it goes this year, or maybe they should look at alternative uses, but good luck.
So we have a motion and a second, I believe. We have a motion. We had a motion, right?
No, I don't think so. We have
Do we have a motion to approve the conditional use grant?
So,
Commissioners Lamke and Parrish, motion and second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. The next item on business is an application by Mr. and Mrs. Lammy for the removal of 2 specimen trees at 11410 North Creekside Court. Who's going to be presenting this to us?
I can, Mr. Mayor.
Excuse me?
I can.
will.
Oh, Mr. Geese.
I'm Peter from Flagstone Landscaping.
Excuse me, I'm asking staff.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No problem. Mr. Geese.
So it was actually 4 trees in question. 2 of the trees are undersized by the Mequon standards from the preservation policy. You can see listed in the report that 1 was 7-inch, 1 was 6.5-inch. The 2 trees that are in question that would be considered for preservation would be the 14-inch bur oak and a 12-inch bur oak. The area that these trees were in was a previously wooded area that was consistent with preserved. There's a tree preservation area that's just east of this kind of corridor. The trees in this area that were removed were similar in species and kind of similar to that woodland that's directly to the east. The woods that was around these trees to begin with would have been made up primarily of basswood or American linden, and then these couple of bur oaks that are in question. The removals of American lindens were done for some work I think that's being done out there, and then there's these 2 trees left in question. Both of them are in really good condition without any visible defects to the trunks or the trees themselves, other than a little bit of a shaded canopy.
Thank you. Mr. Kudlata, I take it that you're representing the applicant, is that correct?
Yes, I am.
Can you tell us why you want to remove these trees?
Well, 2 of them we want to install a swimming pool, and they're in the middle of the pool. That's a problem. And then the other one has been in these woods forever, which is basically ash and buckthorn, and so it looks pretty much like a flagpole, and there's no really aesthetic value to it, except that it's an oak and a tree.
You said 2 of them are where the pool is going to be. I thought we were only talking about 2 trees.
Well, one of the 6, well, there's 2, one's the 10-inch oak that's in the middle of where the pool is supposed to go, and the other one's a 14-inch oak, which is may suffer when we do the construction and the change of grades. And it's been in this woods forever, and so it's really like a big flagpole.
Mr. Geese, tell us about the flagpole.
So neither one of them are really a flagpole. Both of them are, I mean, they're definitely in the shape of, they're not branched, the branch structure that they would normally have if they had been grown, you know, out in a lone field by themselves. They definitely are branched higher than they would if they were grown in an open field. But I think they're still in good enough condition to consider, you know, preservation. Neither one of them showed any visible signs of defect or decay. There was no fungal bodies on the sides of these trees or anything to lead me to believe that if they were left unimpeded, that they wouldn't have a survivability.
And is there another location for the pool?
Not really, not to make it aesthetically appropriate. And we are adding.
Again, sorry, I'll say, I gotta be more clear who I'm addressing my questions to.
Address me or him or whatever.
I'm addressing the questions to staff. If, from a land use perspective, is there another way to put a pool in that, as they're trying to do?
Without seeing the plans, the one tree that's the 14-inch is further to the north end of the property, closer to the home. And then the tree that's the 12-inch diameter bur oak is actually further to the south end of the backyard. Really, it would, in my opinion, it would either be take one or take both. I mean, you would, if you slid one way, you'd have to take one of them. So the other way, you'd have to take the other one. So I mean, that's kind of, they're kind of equidistant in the backyard. So both of them would be impacted, I believe.
Okay. Other questions from the commission? Commissioner Choran.
Well, okay, one of them appears to be in a location where there's a pool proposed. And I think what I heard from the landscape architect was that the other one would be an issue because of the regrading to create the pool. Am I correct?
And who are you addressing the question to?
To the landscape architect, Peter.
Okay.
Yes, the other one is farther away from the pool. I just worry about its health in the long run because we're going to be changing the grades. The other one's in the middle of the pool, which would have to go.
Okay. So theoretically, one has to be removed to construct the pool, and the other one will be impacted by the construction of the pool also.
Yes, I worry about the long-term health of the other one.
All right.
Mr. Geese, have you looked at the long-term health of the other one?
I think both of them have a good survivability. I mean,
no, but if you put the pool in, if he put the pool in, I wasn't given a grading plan to see what the grades were proposed coming out into the backyard. I think, given that, you know, we would have to go through some type of protection zone for this, I think that you could still, it's feasible to think that they would have a survivability, given that they would be protected through construction. Why don't we have and this might not be to you, Mr. Geese, but to somebody on staff, shouldn't we have a description as to why the applicant is asking for the waiver and what's the plan is? And I mean, we're kind of, the materials only kind of give half the story. I'm assuming that the applicant submitted some materials.
I didn't get any materials other than the tree request.
Okay. I mean, I think in the future we ought to have the rest of the story if we're going to have to address these applications. Commissions, anybody? Mr. Choran.
Well, given what my understanding is that both of them will be impacted by the construction of the pool and the grading required to create the pool. So my motion is to allow removal of both.
Subject to the reimbursement requirements or the alternatives under the
correct
preservation ordinance. Is there a second? to the motion? I'll second the motion. Discussion. Ms. Schaefer.
Mr. Kudlata also wanted to speak. I don't know if you prefer he
Oh.
go first.
Mr. Kudlata?
Is there something in Mequon where you give an inch for an inch as far as if we add trees, does that count against the removal of trees? Like we have groves of birch going in here and other trees that once they're provided with the appropriate grades and protection, we're actually adding more caliber inch of trees in the removal of the tree. Is there kind of a trade back we get for that? Or in other communities there are?
There is, that's one of the options in the staff's recommendation. So there's an option, correct me if I'm wrong, Mike or somebody else, but you'd have to put in 19.5 inches of replacement trees. So that'd be 10 native trees of at least 2-inch caliper approved by the forester, or pay a $1,950 payment to the city forestry fund. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So basically the 19.5 inches would be 75% of the caliper inches being removed. So if you want to call it a trade, that is kind of the trade, is that you put the money into escrow until those caliper inches were replaced on site, and then I would do an inspection. And once those caliper inches are satisfied, then we would release the money from escrow.
So it's 75% of the caliber inch in replacement.
Caliper inch, yeah. Right.
That's it. I think it's very fair.
Ms. Schaefer, Commissioner Schaefer.
Yeah, I'm trying to I mean, the next item is a tree item too. I just feel a bit like a broken record, but we do a lot of specimen tree removal approval, which to me sometimes begs the question if our intent to be a tree city and uphold our what I thought our values were for these trees is genuine. You know, these people bought their house. I guess maybe we just need to hold developers and buyers and sellers to a higher standard to understand what they're buying when they purchase property, so that it's not, well, now I want to build a pool and oh, these trees are in the way. So it just feels disingenuous to me that we get so many of these requests. It feels to me, and I am admittedly, you know, a tree proponent, when it feels like there's something broken in the process further up the line, and perhaps that's something that we need to reinforce with developers. I don't know how you can hold developers to that standard, but I feel uncomfortable with it. I will vote in favor of the way Mr. Gies, I will vote against the tree removal. However that will work.
That'll be against the motion. Other comments? I'll give my comment. While I think that we as a city, we do require the replacement of trees, so that we're not just getting rid of specimen trees, we're creating an alternative. Property, when somebody buys the property, a lot we laid out ought to have the ability to use their property for normal residential purposes. And a swimming pool is a normal residential purpose, just like placing a home or a garage. And, you know, I think, you know, that's something that perhaps we consider when we approve plats, you know, where we allow lots. That's the reason why, you know, in the west and north side, we're considering a conservation subdivision ordinance to make sure we're preserving through the north and west sides of Mequon the undeveloped land. I do think when we've laid out a lot, I think people bought those trees, and while we should request that they make reasonable accommodations to preserve them, if their use can do that, I'm not in favor of telling people they can't use their property. So that's my position on it. Anybody else? We have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Commissioner Bach,
Aye.
Commissioner Gentes,
Aye.
Commissioner Chorin,
Aye.
Commissioner Jim Schaefer,
No.
Commissioner Lemke,
Aye.
Commissioner Becky Schaefer,
No.
Alderman Parrish,
Aye.
Mayor Worth.
Aye.
Vote passes 2.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is another tree removal request, and that's for 4 White Pines to allow for the placement of a new home on the parcel at 13930 North Hawks Landing. This is a little more straightforward. Mr. Geese, I'm assuming that to build the house, you need to be able to remove some trees. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah, so 2 of the trees I have recommended for removal, given that the house location, basically, even if you tried to slide this house, I think the construction impacts that these trees would be succumb to, I don't think they'd survive the construction impacts. Even if if we tried to, give some space to them during construction, I think that it's pretty inevitable that both of these would be impacted. There's also 2 other trees that are towards the front of the property. I think there's a map that's included in the packet where you can see that there's 2 12-inch white pine that are towards the front end of the property that they're also proposing for removal. Both of those seem in good condition. They were on essentially a fallow piece of property, and they were unimpeded through their initial growth, so they're very even around the base, and both are in good condition. I believe they have a good survivability through a project like this.
Thank you. Is the applicant on the line? Hearing none, I'm assuming they don't object too much to your recommendations. Is there a motion? Or questions, comments? Well, we'll get a motion and then we'll have questions and comments. Anybody? Mr. Chorin, you're going to approve subject to staff's recommendations?
Now, the staff's recommendations were the removal of the 2 within the footprint of the house, but retain the other 2, right?
Correct. Yeah, retain the 2 12-inch that are up in the front. And I mean, I wouldn't have necessarily approved the 8, and wouldn't have recommended removing the 12 and the 18 that are going to be in the footprint of the house. But given the plans that we were given, there really isn't room. There was some room to the north to slide them back, to slide the home back, but I still think that there wasn't enough room to slide the home back enough where they wouldn't have been impeded by the construction effort.
So this will make Becky Schaefer happy. I agree with the staff recommendations and make a motion to proceed with staff recommendations to retain the 2 trees to the south.
But allow the removal of the other 2 subject to the normal condition.
Right.
There a second?
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Comments, Commissioner Schaefer?
So when when the planning commission before me platted out Hawks Landing, these trees, there was a buildable area that didn't impede any of the specimen trees, I assume, right? That has to be the case, I assume. Is that, or am I mistaken and you can approve a plat assuming that the building pad goes over specimen trees?
Like,
Or Jack.
Or Jack, somebody.
I think this was typically what we do now is that process. We kind of evaluate lots based on location of trees. This subdivision was kind of right at the time when we started with the tree preservation ordinance, so I don't know if that one was looked at as closely as we do today. Even the Concord Creek one, which we had right before us, was kind of at that beginning stages. So I don't know if they fully recognized that there were specimen trees on that lot or not. I know I've had one other lot in that subdivision that had request tree removal in the past because they didn't identify them at the time of the plat. So probably
We know
not.
going forward from, I don't know what roughly year there was review
Yeah,
of that, but perhaps not at the time that these were
Yes, because the ordinance was adopted relatively in the same kind of timeline as this subdivision.
Thanks, Jeff.
Mr. Geese?
I think it's worth noting that the 3 12-inch trees very likely could not have been specimens at the time that this was platted. So it even, you may have been looking at this 18-inch white pine probably being sizable enough that it would have been considered a specimen according to the preservation policy, but the 12 inches probably were not. They probably put on that growth, and given that this is one of the last parcels on that side, I think that's kind of what we ran into, is that they probably weren't, in all likelihood, weren't of size at the time.
Thank you, Mike.
I think also we should be a little careful then, because if we're going to apply the ordinance, what is it, 17, 18 years later, some pretty long after that, what you're going to do is convince the property owner or the developer to quickly remove anything that's under specimen size at the time of plat approval, so that they don't have to deal with this in the future. We don't necessarily want that, because maybe the purchaser will want to keep those trees, but I think there should be some difference between the trees that were identified at the time of plat approval and, in this case, trees that grew a long time later. And I don't know that that's good policy to say, hey, you weren't destructive when the thing was developed, so we're going to penalize you. I think we'd rather have them leave those trees until the buyer comes and makes a decision. So in this case, the other one may be more arguable, but I think this one, it's hard to argue with the removal of these trees. Any other comments? Mr. Genchis?
I just want to confirm the property owner has not called in, is not on the line now.
Yeah, I asked that. Hasn't said anything.
Okay, thank you.
So we have Alderman Parrish.
I liked what you just said. I know we don't always agree, but that was a great point. There's kind of this grandfathering of trees that can occur, or if someone plants it, they shouldn't be penalized down the road once it's become a specimen. So, but I'm following what you were saying there, and I think in principle there should be that grandfathering concept with trees so they don't adversely affect property value.
But you try to keep the ones that were identified at the time of approval as specimens then.
Absolutely.
Perhaps. Even there, I still think that they're the buyer's trees. But we have a motion. Do we have a motion in a second?
Yes.
Yes, we do. Any other discussion on it? Call the roll, please.
Okay. Commissioner Bach,
Aye.
Commissioner Gentis,
Aye.
Commissioner Chorin,
Aye.
Commissioner Jim Schaefer,
Aye.
Commissioner Lemke,
Aye.
Commissioner Becky Schaefer,
Aye.
Alderman Parrish,
Aye.
Mayor Worth.
Aye. Like unanimity. Farmdale Estates, street T and landscape plan approval for the 6-lot single-family subdivision at the northwest corner of Mequon and Farmdale Roads. Who is going to briefly tell us about this?
Neil, and I'm going to try again on my phone. Can you guys hear me now?
You're not breaking up, but you're kind of faint. Can you bring it closer?
Well, I'll just talk like this, if that works.
That sounds great.
So the street tree plan went to tree board for approval on August 19th, and they recommended approval of 58 trees along the private road, and they are just back in front of Planning Commission for approval of that street tree plan, as well as the landscape plan, which includes landscaping in the cul-de-sac island and the entrance island. And those are both in outlots and shall be maintained by the homeowners association. Staff does recommend approval of the landscape plan and street tree plan, subject to the conditions in the report.
Thank you. Any questions from the commission? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve or not? Commissioner Torn, I saw your hand up. Commissioner Lemke, is that a motion and a second? We have a motion and a second from Commissioner Torn and Commissioner Lemke. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Excuse me, anybody opposed? No. The ayes have it. The next application is a minor request approval for fill in excess of 1,000 cubic yards for the berms at 12701 North Farmdale Road. Is there somebody who wants to tell us what's going on there?
I would love to, Mayor.
Thank you.
Please note that this is actually for kind of two sets of applications. One was for the berm that was constructed along the house, and that's an after the fact permit when it exceeded the 1,000 cubic yards and the height that's authorized for staff. And then in addition to that, they propose a number of berms to be constructed along Farmdale, which are included in the report for approval tonight. Please also note that they do intend to install berms of a similar size and height along Highland Road, and unless the Planning Commission changed the conditions of approval to allow that tonight, they would have to come back for approval of those berms.
And you have recommended approval subject to a number of conditions, is that correct?
That is correct.
Are these berms to provide soundproofing or privacy, or it's, you know, we did receive comments from at least one nearby resident. I haven't driven by in a while, but when they were first being done, it was kind of unusual looking. What are they doing?
I can't speak to the why behind it. So all I can speak to is the grading itself with respect to the berming. I do know I talked to them. I don't know if they're on the call here. I spoke to them earlier late last week, I should say, and they did intend they may attend tonight, but I can't speak to intent.
Mr. Mihal, are you on the Mihal? I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Are you on the call? Well, he's not. So what does the commission want to do with this? Is there a motion of some sort? Commissioner Schaefer.
You know, it'd be really nice to understand the intent, especially if part of this is after the fact and there was just a, you know, if they were just going ahead with this without seeking any approval.
No,
and then have now had to, go ahead, Kristen.
Sorry, I do want to know, they did have a fill permit. It was that as they began construction, the amount of fill and size exceeded our authority. So they did have an initial fill permit. They just exceeded the authority with which we could continue that permit.
Which almost makes it worse to me because they had a permit that probably then specified some of the details of what was allowed and then they exceeded it anyway. Does that sound right? Because in the permit would it have said 1,000, whatever the amount was?
Yes, and unfortunately, this also crossed with staff that is no longer with us. So I can't speak to all of the details and intent behind the original one, just that we did issue a stop work order for the initial berm around the home to be able to bring them into compliance and have it before you for approval.
Yeah, it'd be really helpful to understand the intent here. So that's unfortunate that they weren't able to attend or at least submit some sort of explanation.
It would be helpful. This goes back to the tree ordinance request also, to when we're approving these things, to have some description of what are they doing.
Well, and while we could, I'll just note that that's not a threshold for approval. So I assume that's part of why they don't otherwise indicate it does. I mean, the berm permit doesn't indicate that it has to be for privacy or for protection or for anything. It's just the regulations of the grading standards themselves.
Okay, that's fair. Any other comments? Commissioner Bach.
Just a question, does the city ever require trees being planted on the berms when they go up, or does that ever come up?
Yes and no. There is a reference to a landscape plan. So we will, when the application comes forward for permitting, we will submit that through the Department of Community Development for consideration.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions, comments, or a motion? We need to move to approve or deny. It's why we're here.
I'll make a motion to approve, subject to staff's recommendations.
All right, Commissioner Chorin, I saw your hand up. Is that a second or is that a question? Okay, it's a second. Any other
Second.
discussion? Commissioner Schaefer.
So does that, Brian's motion, do we have to specify then regarding the berms along Highland? Since Kristen mentioned that that's a separate.
It's written in the conditions of approval right now that they would have to come back. You all tonight would have to amend the staff's recommendations for conditional approval to accommodate that if you so wish to.
I think
Why
we
would we not?
Item 9 says berm construction on Highland Road. So item 9 is where this is addressed.
Right, I'm just wondering, why do you have that as they got to come back, or why would we go one way or another?
So what I don't have is the calculations on the berm and the specific berm location. They were waiting on their final wetland delineation to be able to provide the specific grading plan. So we can potentially assume, based on the size of the permit or the size of the original request, that the subsequent addition of those on Highland Road would be roughly double. So we'd have to modify the amount that's authorized as a part of this permit.
But if we're simply going to come back and we're going to say they met the standards, couldn't we approve this subject to staff's review of the application and approval that they've met the standards? Commissioner Lundin.
You could, yes. So the actual recommendation again is for the 10,500 cubic yards of fill. So if you made that, for example, 21,000, and if we assume that you want all of the other standards as the condition approval with respect to height and location from the right of way and things to stand, then those could apply to the Highland Road berms as well.
Well, would we even need to specify a number? Could it be such additional amount as staff deems appropriate under our standards?
If you feel comfortable capturing it, again, it's the 1,000 cubic yard threshold. So knowing that the Highland Road ones are at least intended to be the same height, we can assume that they would exceed that. So if you don't want to put a limit on the ultimate amount of fill and to otherwise indicate that as long as they're of a similar size and standard to those on Highland Road, then we would just remove the specificity of the 10,500.
The movement and the second, your thoughts?
I guess I don't, what's the problem with them coming back? It just gives you more control where other berms are gonna go, and I know we're trying to make it more efficient.
Well, given their history too, you know, of doing some work beyond what the permit allowed, makes me hesitant about not having them come back.
Okay, well, we do have a motion in a second. If nobody wants to amend it, that's the motion. All in favor, or please call the roll.
Commissioner Bach,
Aye.
Commissioner Chorin,
Aye.
Commissioner Gentes,
Aye.
Commissioner Jim Schaefer,
no,
Commissioner Lemke,
Aye.
Commissioner Becky Schaefer,
Aye.
Alderman Parrish.
Aye.
Mayor Worth.
Aye. The next item on the agenda is the residents at Foxtown. They have a street tree lighting request and a development agreement amendment. Which staff person wants to tell us what's going on here?
I'll handle part and Kristen will handle part, so we'll tag team up on Tom here. Just a point of order, the street tree approval has been removed from the agenda. There was some issues with the latest plan, so we had to pull that portion out of the agenda, so it might not have gotten totally caught up with some of the agendas, but that has been.
Street lighting, you mean, or street tree?
Street tree. So we're here for lighting.
That's what I said, I thought, but maybe I misspoke.
Trees. Sorry. So we're here. Go ahead. Oh,
go ahead.
Okay. So for the lighting part, I'm gonna share my screen, I think, if that's okay. Just to show them a map here of the area. Can everybody see that? Can you see that?
Can you make it any bigger?
I can zoom in, sure. Does that help?
It does.
Okay, so basically, our code requires planning commission approval in terms of street lighting, but it doesn't dictate any design specifications or quantities. So the applicant is requesting 2 street lights to enter the subdivision. One is located where my cursor is here, and then the other one is located down in this location down off of Fox Crossing Drive. Our review of the item, we feel that there's a nice opportunity to put an additional light in this location here where the purple is, as well as one down in this area as well. So with that, there'd be 4 lights kind of bookending those both of the 2 driveways or the parking areas for those 2 streets. The other issue is the applicant is working with We Energies, and he's looking to do a We Energy style light, which is probably hard to see here, but it's in the packet. It's basically has a shield over it, similar design of what our town center light is, but it does have a glass shield over it. So our request is to use a light that is similar to what our Cedarburg Road light is, but it's basically the same light that the rest of Foxtown has used. I could have pictures of a couple of these things. This is our City Hall light in front of City Hall along Cedarburg Road. This is the one that is used at the rest of Foxtown on Weston Drive. This is the one we would request them to use. The applicant does not want to use this light fixture, and he did submit a picture of a light. I'll have to find it shows the location. Let me search for that. But we feel that there's such close proximity to each other that it would be beneficial to use the same fixture. Basically, Foxtowns are the E buildings, which are known as right in this location. They're showing lights over on this street corner and this street corner. So they're close enough proximity where we feel that they should all match and be the same style. I'll look for that other picture, and then I'll turn it over to Kristen. She can talk a little bit about the development agreement amendment portion. Oh, sure. There.
Yes.
You
So
want
the
Kristen to go
developer,
now? Go ahead, Kristen.
the developer is requesting further amendments to the development agreement, mostly with respect to the requirement for the paving of final asphalt prior to final plat. The previous amendment had provided that some of the streets within the development were not required to have the final asphalt surface, and instead to place a letter of credit on file until 50% of the homes or 2 years after the final plat approval. Current request is to have none of the final asphalt installed at the time of final plat, and a change in the requirement for that paving from 50% to 75% of the homes or 2 years. Staff is recommending that if the amendment is considered, that it maintain at the 50% home as was granted with the previous development approval, and that if it is considered, there's an additional letter of credit required for the binder course in case there's any damage as construction is completed without the full strength of the final course of the asphalt.
Thank you. Jack, I'll go to the applicant in a minute, but Jack, did you find what you wanted to show us?
Yes, here, I'll share my screen again. This is the picture that was supplied by the applicant, basically showing as you drive in towards the subdivision, you can see where the Neiman arrow is pointing to. Those would be the E1 buildings. That would have the town center lights similar to what I showed in the picture. And then the lakeside lights would be one of them would be in this location right here. So I think even from the picture that they're showing, we feel that that's close enough proximity where those should match one another.
Thank you. Mr. Zapchak, I saw that you were on here.
Thank you.
What can you tell us?
Well, Jack, if you go back to that picture that you had up, I'm suggesting that we eliminate that light that we were proposing, the lakeside light, and actually we were the ones that suggested moving the lighting to the east of our property, because having 3 lights there, that one light, the lakeside light at the entrance is like 20 feet away from the Neiman light, and that would look ridiculous. And I think that Lakeside actually selected the lights. If you recall, we had a meeting with Tim Van Harpen and Brian Scheib with our company, and we reviewed this with you prior to the Neiman and Bob Bach suggesting what lighting they wanted, and you approved it. We gave you the cut sheets. Now you're suggesting that we should change our lighting to match their lighting. I just, and even, Jack, even if they were different, it wouldn't make any difference, because you wouldn't be able to see the lights at Foxtown Residence from Weston. I mean, that just really doesn't make any sense. And, excuse me.
Why don't we take these 2 issues up separately? Because I think they are, let's take the 2 issues, the lighting issue and then the development agreement issue up separately, and we'll move to approve or deny or what have you on lighting, and then we'll go to the development agreement.
That's fair.
I think they're very different issues.
If I can finish, please. And also, when I first started this project, I went to talk to Jack about the lighting. And he says, Tom, this is a private road. You are not required to do lighting. And so if we want to, we can opt to say we don't want any lighting, but I prefer having the lighting, but I don't want, staff dictating what type of lighting that we have to put up there, and especially when we selected the lighting first.
Jack, why do we have the lights next to each other?
Well, I think, first of all, the plan that was submitted by Lakeside, they're proposing a light in that location. So it wasn't staff that said that should be there. I think it still should be in that location, because that's going to be somewhat of a main intersection between the E1 building and the homes, as well as leading back to the future D building. So I think it's a good location to have a light there at the intersection. But that location was chosen by Lakeside. There's 2 locations they chose on their plan, that one and then the one further to the southeast. We're asking for additional 2, and he is correct. The lighting code does not require them to put in any lights. I mean, they could not put any lights, but I think we feel that now that they've gone down this path of having those 2 lights, I think we should try to at least get as much as we can from the other end of the street and get the similar type of lighting pattern as they're proposing. And we did not approve these lights. They were giving us samples of that We Energies had, but I never did get a response to why they couldn't use the lights that were used in the town center. That was never answered to me. So at this point, we've used it for Foxtown's Brewery. We've used it for the Weston Drive. We've used it for Cedarburg Road. We have it down Mequon Road, where in front of Spur 16, in front of St. Paul's Fish. We plan on using it, adding a few lights, additional lights on Mequon Road in front of the cemetery. So we just feel that to be consistent, this would be another nice location to use the same light fixture.
But let me follow up with a question. Okay, I understand wanting to illuminate the intersection, but at least from that picture you showed, there are already 2 lights there at the intersection. What is the benefit of the 3rd light?
Well, I think it's just gonna provide more light to that intersection. It's a relatively active, that'll be hopefully a relatively active intersection. So if there was a bump out on the other side, I think it would be nice to have them on all four corners, like a typical street pattern. But unfortunately, we just don't have the room on the other side. But again, that location as shown in the picture that was the requested location of Lakeside.
No, I understand that, but I'm just trying to understand. It sounds like now Lakeside saying they don't want that light there. I'm trying to understand why 3 lights are necessary. The 2 lights won't illuminate the intersection. Commissioner Chorn, you had your hand up.
Well, that was my question too. What does the foot candles look like? Do you need that additional light fixture at that intersection?
Well, the problem is that we don't have a standard for our illumination levels for the street. There's nothing in the code that dictates what it is. And you could have a dispersion plan done here, but we'd have to get the 2 separate projects to get together to provide it for us, because that's the line between the 2 projects. I mean, there's probably enough light there to actually see, but there's not a standard that says that intersection has to be 20 foot candles in illumination. So we don't have a standard to go by. So if the applicant does not want to put a light there, I still think we'd still prefer to see the lights at the other 3 locations. But I just think it would look out of balance if there's not a light there, yet there's one on the other end of the street.
It's just don't fucking know.
May I speak? Mayor World?
Mr. Zapchak?
Yeah, I mean, think about it. Jack just said there's a lot of traffic there. There's gonna be less traffic there than at the intersection at Weston, and there's less illumination there. You know, and plus, you're gonna have 2 lights on one side and 1 light on the other side. It just, you know, if I could speak openly, which I will, you know, Tom Neiman and Bob Bach and I, we met every Wednesday morning for over a year to put this thing together, this whole project. We have not had 1 meeting with staff collectively. And that's why we have an issue with this lighting. It's not well planned out. I mean, if any of the commissioners can tell me it makes sense to have 2 lights on one side of the road and 1 light on the other side, and you have twice the illumination that you have at the intersection of Foxtown and Weston, I think it's absurd. It doesn't make any sense.
Well, we're not going to go into why there weren't overall meetings, but this was applied for this development. This overall development was applied for as, there may be separate parts to it, but it was applied for as one development. And I think we at least want to have some harmony among the various aspects of the overall development. Kind of can't have the cake and eat it too. In saying we're going to come to the city and tell you about Foxtown as a whole, and then not expect some cohesion in the development. But other comments from the Planning Commission on lighting? I guess my thought is if we don't require lighting, I'm not, but we do require approval of what the lighting looks like, much like any other, the landscaping and attributes. I think our code does require that, correct?
Yes, the approval of the lighting is in front of this body for that reason.
So we may not require lighting, but it is part of the approval of the development. Commissioner Bach.
Yeah, I mean, that was going to be my question. I'm curious, you know, we're having this discussion on lighting, and, you know, the code doesn't require lighting, yet we want lighting, and the developer says, you know, I'll put a light, but everybody wants lighting. So maybe there's a code issue somewhere that needs to be revisited on this as well. Just wondering.
Well, I mean, I think you have to look at this in terms of what the requirement is. We're talking about subdivision lighting. So we have, you know, subdivisions in our rural areas that are on 5-acre lots. We have subdivisions that are on 1-acre lots. This is a relatively, you know, new type of development. So it's hard to put a lighting standard in place that dictates what types of lights are needed for those. You're not going to get a one size fits all for those three. So basically what the code says, if you are going to supply lighting, we need to review it to make sure that it's not overly illuminated, or it's not a glare issue. So there's not a lot of requirements to it, but it'd be very difficult to create a lighting standard that would apply to this as well as a 5-acre lot subdivision out on the western portion of town.
Am I correct? And the developer could say, I don't want to put any lights here, and the city may want lights, and the no lights would win.
Yeah, again, there's not a requirement, just like in every other subdivision, that they have any streetlights other than in our typical subdivision. You're required to have a We Energy light at the entrance off the main road. So like if, for example, Sutton Ridge, you have to have a light right at the entranceway to the subdivision, but that's all we require.
Got it. Thank you.
Commissioner Chorin.
So let me see if I got this right. The applicant submitted a plan illustrating a number of light fixtures. The city has requested that more be added and that they match what is done in Foxtown, when in reality, all we, I guess, technically can do is approve where he is suggesting them, but force them to match the Foxtown fixtures. Am I right?
Well, I think you have the right to say that you can decide on placement of the fixtures, and if it's overbearing to the developer, he can withdraw and not put any lighting in. But I guess right now the request was for 2 lights, which sounds like the one light they don't want to do anymore, but that was a submittal that was presented to the planning commission, and then we would be requesting 2 additional lights.
Ms. Tollefson. Ms. Tollefson.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, planning commissioners. I was under the impression or believe that the PUD for Foxtown as a master did require a lighting plan to be submitted in for approval, just like landscape and everything. Jack, was that the case in this particular application?
Yeah, I mean, there was a general requirement, but again, whether we take it to that level of the subdivision light versus just the perimeter lights, and we've worked with every other entity, whether it's Bob Bach or Foxtown or the brewery. We've met with them and we've went over the what we'd like to see in terms of the lighting, and we had no issues up to this point. Everybody else was on the same page in agreement and felt that those lights should match. So I guess we've done our part. I mean, you're right, we've never met with all parties involved in it, except at the very beginning before any of the stuff was kind of flushed out. But we had numerous meetings over the last 2 years to go over these issues, and I think everybody else was on the same page with regard to providing the same type of fixture, the same type of look. There was a requirement to have cohesion amongst development, whether it's landscaping and lighting. There should be some consistency amongst all different parts of this PUD.
Commissioner Parrish.
What, Kim, what were you gonna say? Sorry.
I wholeheartedly believe that conditions with a PUD, when you're contemplating multiple projects on multiple sites, that it was every intention that there would be some synergy with the lighting. I don't think because this portion of the master plan or site is a subdivision, in comparison to the apartment or the office, somehow suggests that they would ever expect there to be a lack of cohesiveness with lighting, particularly in town center when we're trying to do a uniform look between the private development and the public infrastructure investment.
I think I heard you. In the future, can you hold your phone up too, please? Because you're not coming across very clearly, but I think people heard you. Oh, Commissioner Parrish, did you have something you wanted to say?
Yeah, so just to be clear, we're talking about the two lights on the east end of this court on a private road, correct?
That's the two lights we're requesting, in addition to what they were suggesting, which was the two lights on the west side, but now it sounds like the one light they no longer want to do.
Okay, I don't know if I totally follow, but just my take on it is, yes, we're trying to be consistent. It sounds like there's some sort of hardship here that the developer hasn't quite articulated. Perhaps he's bought the lights. If it was on the corner and in quite a public place, I could understand why we should stick to the standard, but because we're talking about the far eastern lights on a private road, I could see, having some leeway here. I don't know if I'm misunderstanding the issue, but it seems fair.
I don't normally allow this, but Mr. Zapchak, I'll give you one more kick at the cat. Can you tell us, because it is rather unclear if your application showed two lights, and that's what it does show in the written document. You want two, I can't tell if you want the other two, and it seems like you want to remove one of the two that you applied for. Please
Okay.
tell us what it is you want, and also why you're hung up on which light pole you're looking at.
Okay, Jack, would you please put that picture back up? I think there's really a lot of clarity here. First of all, I want to make it very clear that Lakeside selected the fixtures before.
I don't care. I don't care. We're here now. So forget the whole sequence of events.
The
Please.
other thing is there's Bob Bach and Tom Neiman and I, there's no consternation. I mean, we have a great relationship. But my point is Lakeside selected the lights, the fixture design before they did. And if you look at the picture, the two red ones that says Neiman, they're a different light fixture. And when we did our plan, we were unaware that they were going to have two light fixtures at that location. So we have suggested putting the blue one that says Lakeside. So when I saw, you can see in the picture that it's set up, to put a light fixture there, I said, well, it's kind of silly for us to put a light fixture 20 feet away. So we suggested, not staff, that we move, if you look down the road where that porta potty is, at the very end of the road, we suggested putting that.
Excuse me, stop for a second. Stop for a second. Jack, can you put up the site diagram? I don't know where the porta potty, oh, I see back there. Okay.
Yeah. So we're on that purple writing where it says light, we're suggesting relocating that light that's right next to Tom Neiman's lights to the east where it says light, and then putting another one to the south where it says light, and then we'll have one on Foxtown Crossing. So we were suggesting, as opposed to just having
Foxtown Crossing, excuse me.
That's the road that goes off. The main road going through the center is called Foxtown Drive. And Foxtown Crossing is the road that it kind of is like a circumference.
So Jack, where is it that he's talking about the third one? Can you put the cursor there, please?
So the third one he's talking about is right here. This is the one of the two he suggested when he submitted.
I don't care. I just want to know where it is. So that's one and the other two. So that is what the applicant's asking for, right?
Well, now he is. It's not what the submittal.
I don't care what he was before. I just want to know where we're at right now. So we're looking at those three positions is what he's asking for. Staff is recommending one up front. I just want to make sure people know what the options are here. So that's one issue. Do we want the three or do we want the four? And the second, correct me somebody if I'm wrong. And the second issue is the style of light, which we really haven't seen. Is that correct?
Yes.
Right.
Okay. Why don't we have a picture of what it is that you'd like to have, Mr. Zapchak?
We haven't gotten there yet.
What do you mean we haven't gotten there yet?
Well, it's in the packet.
Okay.
This is what was submitted with the packet. It shows basically this fixture here is the head, and then this is the pole.
So we really don't have a good picture of it. Why? How does this differ, Jack? Because I can't tell from that. I couldn't tell from the packet.
This is, again, the head's a little bit different, but the biggest difference between the two is that this one has a glass shield, whereas the town center ones that we use are like basically like this. It's open and it has LED lights in the top.
And why, Mr. Zabchak, don't you want to use the town center lights?
Because I was told that I didn't have to.
No, I want to know why you don't want to now, not what you were told some other time. Have you
Well,
ordered them? You have them? Are you getting, is We Energy's paying for them? What's our
Yeah.
reason here?
We already ordered them, and We Energies has a better deal where you pay a flat fee monthly for the electricity. I think it's just a smarter deal.
Okay. Anything else on the lights? And I don't want to go into history anymore. Anything else on the lights that we need to know to make a decision? Jack or Mr. Zabchak?
No.
I think it's pretty
All right.
clear.
All right. So commission, we have two decisions. 3 lights or 4. Town center lights or not town center lights. We'll bifurcate this decision. Is there a motion to have either 3 or 4? Marty?
I make a motion that we approve the 3 light fixtures, one at the east end of, well, the 3 fixtures. I'm going to
Yeah,
get this.
I think that's clear.
And-
Is there a
and that-
second?
And they
I'll
need
second that.
and they need to match the design of the town center.
Okay, so we're not going to that question. Let's bifurcate the question. The first is we'll go with 3. We have a motion and a second on that. All in favor, say aye.
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 Anybody opposed to the 3? Okay, now we have, Marty, you're making a motion to have it match the town center lights.
Correct.
Is there a second? I'll second it. Second from Ms. Schaefer. I just think this should have been resolved in an application prior to now, before you ordered the lights. This was sold as kind of an integrated, everything kind of matched together development. We've made lots of concessions and moved things around to be accommodating, but I don't quite, it might have been a better deal, but that should have been fleshed out a long time ago, and the lighting plan should have been submitted. That's my view of it. Mr. Lemke?
Just think, on the opposing view, private residences on a private road that is on the back end where the public shouldn't really be driving through here. I don't see a big difference in a big enough difference in the lights to make us order something different.
Other comments? Mr. Genchis?
I'll share. I agree with Commissioner Lemke. I'm not sure. Initially, I thought we should have a common look, but given where those lights will be located, I just don't see it making that big a difference. I think it's going to be a higher quality looking light anyway. It's going to fit with the overall look and feel of the development of this particular part of the development. So I would take the opposing view as well.
I'm probably going to switch my position, but anybody else? So, Commissioner Schaefer.
If the mayor can switch his position, and after listening to the other 2, I think I'm going to switch too.
Because you're withdrawing your motion, because you're the movement.
That's right.
So do we have a different motion?
Wouldn't a motion
That we approve the use of the We Energies lights for these 3 spots.
right?
Second.
I wish we had a better picture. But there's a motion and a second. They're the same, are they the same color at least, Jack?
I assume they're both black, but I don't know if they're the exact same, you know, whether they're glossy or not, I don't know.
Maybe Mr. Zabchuk could answer that?
I believe they're the same color. They're like a glossy. Yeah,
We
the
want to
only-
make the approval subject to them being the same color.
They're black.
There. And nobody's making that as part of the motion. Commissioner Schaefer?
I don't even know anymore. It feels like it feels like this is not how the process is supposed to work. So I'm frustrated. I don't disagree that this is a separate, I don't disagree that perhaps there is rationale for the lights being different, but I do not like the way that it feels like this specific portion of this project, which is unique, but it has come back again and again and again for repeated changes. And to bring it back and be like, oh, I kind of want this, and oh, you see kind of where I want these. There's hardly enough detail to make a decision.
Well,
I think it compromises the process.
I would second a motion to table this lighting thing so that we actually can see what they look like, if somebody made that motion.
I can make that motion.
There's a motion by Commissioner Chorin to table. I'll second that motion. Motions to table are not debatable. All in favor of tabling the lighting so that we can actually see what these look like, say aye.
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 Anybody opposed?
Nay.
Call the roll, please.
Okay. Commissioner Bach,
Aye.
Commissioner Gentis,
No.
Commissioner Chorin,
Aye.
Commissioner Jim Schaefer,
Aye.
Commissioner Lemke,
No.
Commissioner Becky Schaefer,
Aye.
Alderman Parrish,
No.
Mayor Worth.
Aye. This was just not flushed out enough to make a rational decision, I think. The second part is the development agreement. The Director Lundin gave us a description. Mr. Zabchak, what do you have to say about where she's at on the development agreement?
Well, I don't know. This thing in Commissioner Schaefer Woody. Yeah, you're absolutely right. You know, we've come back many times because this is a very, very unique project. Nothing has ever been developed like this in Mequon. And, you know, there's a lot of things that, I just, honestly, I have to very candidly say, I don't know what is going on. I mean, like Jack is requiring a letter of credit for both the binder and the final course. I mean, what is that about? I mean, Kim, have we ever done that? I mean, is this?
I'll take that. Don't blame that on Jack. You can blame that one on me. And I would answer that by saying we wouldn't allow for final plat without the final surface course. So when we're having requests like that be made, we have to make sure that we're protecting the vested interest of the city. So as you're asking for something unique, we're trying to be sure that we're protecting the city and what would happen if ultimately the development couldn't do so, which is why we're recommending that the letter of credit cover the binder course as well.
Yeah, and Kristen, I really respect you. I think you're on top of the ball, but I just, you know, but then Jack says, he says, Tom, you know, we need to have a
Just
letter.
correct the issues, not what Zach says. Yeah,
What?
please, Mr. Zabchek, please address the issues in front of us, not what Jack said or didn't say.
Well, it has to do with the letter of credit. That costs a lot of money that we're putting up for this. You know, Jack says, you know, you're gonna beat up the binder course, but then he wants us to put the final course on. I mean, what sense does that make? And then, you know, there's so many things. You know, we have to have all the trees in prior to final plat. All right, now there's trees in between the houses that are 8 feet apart. So we plant the trees and we have to pull them out when we do put the basements in, then we have to replant them. I mean, it's just, you know, another thing, I think this is Bridget's thing, you know, before we get final plat, we gotta get to final grade. So we have to import soil to get to final grade. And then when we dig, we have to export soil. But our thought was to, you know, we're not at final grade, so we're gonna be, next month, we're gonna be digging 3 or 6 lots, I don't even know. And then we were gonna get the final grade, and that was the plan. But it doesn't make any sense. And sidewalks, and Kim, you and I talked about that. I just found out that the sidewalks are so close to excavation that they're gonna fall into the hole when we dig the hole. And like I said, this project is so different, and I really appreciate staff what you did. Town Center did not allow residential housing, and so we changed the ordinance. But you know, we're trying to package a development agreement into ordinances that are really designed for typical subdivisions. There's nothing addressed in our ordinance for alleys and all this stuff we're doing, and just like the lighting. Somebody makes a comment that said, well, the fixture is different, so it really doesn't make any difference. But now we tabled it because we want to make sure the color is the same. They're both black. One might be flat black or shiny, whatever. I mean, that doesn't make any sense to me. Why would you tell me?
Mr. Zabchek, Mr. Zabchek.
I'm sorry.
You know, if we want to address the particular application in front of us, we can do that. Or we can have you come back after you work this stuff out with staff to go over what it is that you want. We're not going to do an overall review of the project here at the Planning Commission meeting.
You're absolutely right.
You know, yes, there have been changes. I think most of the commission has been very understanding that there would be changes. On the other hand, I'm not sure that the original development agreement was very well reviewed after we approved it and there were no comments to it in the first place and you signed it. But that's all water under the bridge. What would you like us to do today with respect to the individual application and staff's comments, and then we'll make a decision on whether that's what we're going to do.
The application with respect to the lighting or the?
No, we're done with the lighting for today, Mr. Zabchek.
Oh, I'm sorry, that's tabled.
I mean, we got no pictures or anything else that would let us make a decision on the lighting. That's tabled.
This has been very difficult. I don't know. You do what you think is appropriate.
Alderman Parrish.
Motion to table.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to table. Motions to table. Commissioner Director Lundin.
I just want to note that because of the time frame required for paving, if they want to get final plat, if you table tonight, it's essentially requiring that they pave the surface course.
Withdrawn.
I guess I would recommend that we move to approve it per staff's recommendations. If Mr. Zabchek doesn't like the recommendations, we can bring it back next month. He can lay out what he would like somehow in a clear and concise way to make changes, and we can look at that. But simply having it in writing, if he's going to come back, but simply trying to rehash the history of the project and further recognizing that this is unique doesn't help us reach a decision. But is there, I'll move to approve the amendments to the development agreement pursuant to staff's recommendations.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. The final item we have tonight is North Shore Bank. It's a consultation for a 3,250 square foot bank building with rear drive-through for the property located at 1139 to 11333 North Port Washington Road. Jack, I assume this is you?
Yes.
Or am I
I will, I'm gonna get my screen ready and I'll share it again. So this is a request. This is the site where the current Citgo and Mequon Lawn and Garden buildings are. They are requesting a standalone bank at this location. We've been several times, went over a number of issues, and for the most part, they've complied with many things we tried to get addressed. There's just a couple minor details that we're trying to work out, and one of them, I think we felt that it was important to get feedback from Planning Commission before we went any further. And then while they were here, they also would like to get some feedback on the design of the building. So I want to try to pull up the site plan so I could kind of give you some better detail on what we're looking at here. And then I'll share my screen.
While you're doing that, I understand there's at least a couple of people from the applicant here. Is that you, Mr. Breitenfeld? I also see Mr. Kane from North Shore Bank. Anybody else you'd like to introduce? Please unmute. Mr. Breitenfeld or whoever. Can't hear you. Just make it more complicated. Bummer.
Nope.
Rob, I don't see your last name, but you're with the applicant also, I presume?
Yeah, I'm sitting in for the Ian Wilson, the architect with Nolan Carter Architecture.
Okay.
And Aaron is actually with Robert E. Lee and Associates. He's the civil engineer on this project.
Okay. Jack, are you able to pull up what you have?
Yep, I'm ready.
Okay,
So,
we'll let Jack go through his presentation, then we'll come back to you guys. Hopefully, microphones will work by then.
So basically, this is the site plan that we have for the bank. This is Port Washington Road. This is just north of the multi-tenant building that contains Starbucks. It's a very narrow or a very shallow site and not a very big site. It's 0.78 acres, which is far less than the 2 acre minimums of our B2 zoning district. So we expected some waivers to the code as part of a conditional use grant, which is allowed per our code. So we worked on a number of different things, one of them being where to locate the building. The applicant wanted to match basically the Starbucks building, so they have shown a 40-foot front setback. You know, we were supportive of that. We couldn't push it any further back because it bumps up against the rear parking and building setback. There's a small portion along this line right here that encroaches already into that setback, so we felt this was a good location. The biggest issue that we're having is this frontage road between the two connections. Staff is supportive of eliminating this connection and having this a one-way out only onto Port Washington Road and having this as a 2-lane in and out. The applicant does not, he'd like to keep this for the main reason of northbound traffic for entry. There's a median opening in this location here, which would allow that. Without that, he would have to go up to the next intersection, which is Venture Court. That does not have a U-turn, so it is allowed to U-turn there. And I believe it's about maybe 300 to 400 feet in length different than if they came in this location. Staff is not supportive of this for some reason. One, we typically don't want to see the aesthetic of a frontage road. Typically, if there is some asphalt in front of the building, it's associated with a parking area. So we did not want to see this frontage road from an aesthetic standpoint, as well as from a traffic standpoint. This location here is kind of already somewhat of a mess. There is a little median, you can see it on the screen right now, this location here. And currently it's open between the two, but since Starbucks entryway is on the left, it's somewhat backwards. So we felt that it would be better just to completely segregate the entrance from the Starbucks entrance. But having an exit only here, it eliminates this conflict of people turning into Starbucks, turning into the bank, and then exiting the bank. So we felt just by having an exit only here, that would help that situation tremendously. So we would request to eliminate this section of asphalt and just have people enter through here. If you want to go out at the meeting up and they can drive around the bank, which there is a lane that allows them to go around and then exit out this way for Washington Road. The only thing again that would require is northbound traffic would have to go up to Venture Court, do a U-turn, and then enter through this location here. So that's basically the biggest difference between the applicants and staff's view of this site plan. So that was one of the items they wanted to get feedback from the commission. Other than that, they wanted to share with you some renderings of the building, and I have those up on the screen. It shows basically kind of a dual roof pattern. It does have stone and an ample window shown on the building. There is also this is a side view from the parking lot on the north side. And I also, just for some perspective, I did take some pictures. This is this is a little bit different in design, but it's somewhat similar. This is in Germantown. I took some pictures of their relatively brand new bank just to kind of show you some context of what it looks like as it completed. I think it's turned out to be a really nice looking building. So basically, those are the two things that we're looking for.
Yeah, sorry.
If
I know.
to a point where we
Sorry, 7 now.
go back in front
Excuse
of
me,
you.
is that somebody on this line besides Jack talking? If so, please mute your phone.
What's that?
Please mute your phone if you're talking. Or please mute we're
Yeah.
hearing you talk to someone else.
Sorry.
So basically, we're looking for some feedback on the overall architecture as well as this frontage road issue. If we could come to some consensus this evening, I believe they'll be in front of the commission again in either next month or the following month for building and site plan and conditional use approval. So overall, we're supportive of the project, and we understand because of the tight site, there'll be some waivers probably needed. And with the neighboring building so close to the road, we feel that there's some movement on that front setback, and we're okay with everything except it's just that frontage road that we're still kind of hung up on. So with that, we'd like to get some feedback from the commission, and we'll continue to work with the applicant going forward.
Thank you. Somebody from the applicant, would you like to have any comments?
Not initially, no. We do have an alternate plan if this does not go through, but we would like to hear the feedback from the commission first, I guess.
Okay, and I presume the commission, everybody received comments from Mr. Roush, who is the seller of the property. So, planning commissioners, what do you have to say?
Mayor?
Commissioner Turin.
The situation with the Starbucks entrance, it's bad. I mean, there's no way to anything to say other than it's bad. But is it worse to have somebody driving north and doing a U-turn at Venture Court, which I believe has a traffic light there? So I guess given the choice between the two, as much as I'd like to see a lot of green space in front of the building, I think the frontage road and the way they handled it is a good solution to avoid the potential real problem at U-turns at Venture Court. That's all.
Anybody else? On that matter, I also asked the question, aren't U-turns in Wisconsin illegal at controlled intersections?
I don't believe so, no. In fact, on Mequon Road, the DOT prefers the use of U-turns, and you can do one right on Mequon and Port. I've done it several times. It's they prefer that as a way of navigating instead of having more openings in the medians.
Well, I will tell you that's a change from when I took driver's ed. Because it's one of the few things I remember is you can't do U-turns at controlled intersections. But so that I guess I agree with Mr. Chorin. I think somehow I don't like the entrance with Starbucks, but if you're going to have a bank building here, it ought to be viable, and most of the usage comes from the south, I would assume, either off the expressway or from our largest grouping of population is south of here. To suggest that every user of this bank needs to go north and do a U-turn, it's not a particularly, we kind of have to choose between the lesser of two evils. Or else we need to decide that this is too much for this location. Commissioner Schaefer.
I want to address the architecture. I very much like the first floor. I like the materials. I think it's well integrated into the neighborhood. I'm not as enthusiastic about the roof. In a way, I think it looks a little heavy for the first floor. And I guess I understand you like sloped roof, that you have them in other locations. I just think this one isn't well integrated into the first floor, and I'd like to see something that's a little more thoughtful, I guess. Other than that, I very much like the project.
Thank you, Commissioner Schaefer. I think I might agree with you there. The other Commissioner Schaefer, Commissioner Becky Schaefer.
Thank you. This might go beyond the scope of a consultation. I have a question for the applicant, which I don't think you're required to answer, but hopefully you will, out of goodwill. So there's already a North Shore Bank location further south on Port Road, I believe. So I assume that the intent or the reason for this is you've outgrown that location. I guess I'm just looking for some rationale. And again, I don't think that that's a requirement, but I hope you will answer.
Yeah, from the architect standpoint, that I don't know. That would be a banking issue, so that would have to be answered by North Shore Bank.
Is there anyone on the call from North Shore Bank, though? I know Mayor Worth mentioned a bunch of folks who might not have been able to unmute themselves, and perhaps now they can.
Hi, my name is David Kane. I represent North Shore Bank. To answer your question, Commissioner, we do intend to move locations from that existing site.
Okay. And I know it's a permitted use. It's just, I mean, I'll just say it directly, right? Brick and mortar banks in Mequon, a bit of a running joke, just because there are so many in such a small, relatively small area. So it's a permitted use. You know, I can't speak against it, but I feel like we've reached a tipping point in Mequon with brick and mortar banks at a time when online banking has really taken hold, especially with the younger audience.
Commissioner Parrish.
Yeah, thank you to the applicant for your proposal and for your business in Mequon. This is a highly irregular shaped parcel. I looked on both sides of it to see if this could be assembled into a larger project, which is something we always, I think, hope for with these brownfield type developments. So that's not possible here. Both sides have been developed. It remains an odd site with two older buildings. So the idea of consolidating to one makes a whole bunch of sense. Realistically, it's going to be a retail user that comes forth for this site. Any retail user will request the U-turn. I mean, think about yourself. You don't like doing U-turns on the busy road. So you just want to be able to turn in I don't know that we can punish this property owner for the site design errors such as a lack of a proper queue that exists for the Starbucks. So I don't know that their lack of queue, although perhaps unsafe at times, should affect our decision making for the site. This one would actually have potentially less traffic than the current users on the site. I know it's vacant, but when operational, this bank would have fewer users than a gas station and lawnmower store. So relating to the design, my motto now is like, if you see something, say something. The Associated Bank design is bothering me. I'm just gonna come out and say that the fancy art at the top looks horrible. So I just want to encourage the commission that if anything on paper bothers you, like, this is the time to speak up, because then we get stuck with it. So I do agree with Commissioner Schaefer regarding the roof line. I would suggest you maybe come forth with something closer to your Germantown model, which is very attractive and would probably fit in pretty nicely here. I would prefer not to have the access road up front. I think that's bad site design, but if the only way to have the left turn in from going north is to have that, I understand. So those are my ramblings for a concept review.
Sorry,
Mr. Zader?
yeah, I would just like to just, it's necessarily, there was an option that we talked about, that Rob spoke about, that we don't have a picture of, but I just saw it like within the last day or so. You could potentially get rid of the frontage road, but you would be driving in to the south to the bank around the property. So almost against the flow of the drive-through, which I thought was even more convoluted, but there is a way to do it without having a frontage road. I just didn't think it was a better alternative.
Anybody else? Well, Mr. Commissioner Bach.
Yeah, I agree with some of the other commissioners on the roof. After looking at the other bank, the Associated Bank, I agree with Alderman Parrish as well. That, you know, I think just by a quick look at that Germantown building looked much better, much better. So just wanted to make that comment.
Jack, could you put their rendition and the Germantown up again?
Sure.
Yes.
So this is their rendering. This is what Germantown how it was built. So this is the side and then the other side, and then this is the front of the location. So it looks like it's a little bit smaller in size. You know. And then here again, this is different views of this building.
Well, I will be a contrarian. I'm not crazy about either roof, frankly, but of the two, this looks more substantial and like there's some architecture. It doesn't look like, I guess I don't find the other one particularly attractive, at least in the pictures. And this looks like there's at least a little more detail and something to the roof, but I'm not crazy about these glass top buildings anyhow. I frankly think that all three banks, if this gets built like this here, 20 years from now, we're going to be looking at that corner going, wow, the 2020s were, when late teens were an era of a very temporary architecture that you can definitely peg it for when it was built, and it just doesn't hold up to the test of time. But until we actually create some standards for architecture on Port Washington Road, I guess we need to look at these developments as they come. I find both of the other bank buildings to be unattractive, and I'm not sure I'm going to find this to be particularly attractive. But I historically haven't commented much about architecture. Commissioner Jim Schaefer.
I just wanted to add, I think the unit in Germantown, I think that second story is a little simplistic. I do like more detail, like you have shown on the new one in Mequon, but it's just a bit much. It looks a little too heavy in relation to the first. I think it could be refined in the existing building.
Jim, are you speaking to the size of the fascia, basically, the thickness of it? Like this section?
I'm sorry, what did you say?
Are you speaking to like the fascia, the thickness of the fascia?
Yeah, I think the fascia is too heavy. I'm not thrilled with the V design. It reminds me of an airport somewhere. I just think it needs to be refined. Perhaps come up with an alternate design. That's up to the owner.
Commissioner Chorin, you're our other architect. What do you think?
Well, when I first looked at it, I thought my first comment was, I don't know how are they going to drain that section where both slopes come down, but I mean that's a detail. If you think about the Germantown building, which I find attractive, you don't really see the back side, and you don't know if the slope comes down to a flat roof or not. Oh, there we go. Okay. I think a constant slope would look nicer. With regards to the thickness of the roof element, I agree with Mr. Commissioner Schaefer, and I think it doesn't help that sign element really is blocky, and I recognize that that's a whole separate issue with regards to signage. So, kind of in a nutshell, I think if you had a constant slope and perhaps a little bit thinner profile on the roof, I'd find it more appealing.
And just
I
a
think the
better,
building moving out of is much more attractive than this, but that's my view. Commissioner Parrish, your hand was up, and then Commissioner Bach.
yeah, I just realized that by liking the Germantown design, that it opens up the mechanicals in the back of the building. So they would need to find a creative way to still screen those. It looks like they're still exposed in the Germantown model. So I think this commission would want them screened.
Commissioner Bach.
Yeah, I mean, just to your point, Mayor, just we certainly have a lot of banks to look at in that area on Port Washington Mequon Road. And just so it's clear, I mean, personally, I prefer. I don't even know the bank's name. It's a little north. It's on the west side or on the east side of Port Washington, a little north there. That's more of a traditional brick. You know, I can't remember that name, but that building. Yeah, that building will stand the test of time. And, in 25 years, I'm sure that style will still be in play. So that's just my opinion. That's what I prefer.
Anybody else? Well, I'm glad we have quite a consensus for them to draw on. Commissioner Hawley, Commissioner Gensis, do you want to add your 2 cents?
I won't speak to architecture because I'm not qualified to, but I will on the issue of the drive, the frontage road. Or the frontage road look. It's not a frontage road per se. I think the comment made by Commissioner Chorin and others about I was looking at it and hearing the discussion from staff. I was thinking of how does this connect and what type of interplays are going to be between this and the entrance to Starbucks and of course the problems that have built up there from time to time. I don't know that it's any better, and it's probably not better to require people to drive north and then make a U-turn at Adventure. That's an option, obviously, that's being discussed. But I would think, from my perspective, I wouldn't have an objection to entering from the northbound lane at that curb cut or at that median cut. I just think it's a necessity for this location, and so I'd be willing to live with it.
Anyone else? Commissioner Hawley, do you have anything to add?
Sure. I mean, I guess I agree. I don't really love it, and I definitely don't like that V design for the roof. Not that I'm an architect at all, but just don't really like the look of it. Do we need another bank in this area? No, but like Becky said, it's a permitted use. But yeah, I don't know. I don't love the asphalt in the front of the building, but I can't see making people do U-turns. I think that might cause more of a traffic problem.
Is there anything else specifically that we can answer for you, Rob, or anybody else from North Shore?
No, it's been, as it's been mentioned, it's a tight spot. I think the design we came up with really solves some issues with entering, exiting, partnering properties, and it is the safest plan as far as the site plan is concerned, with the drive-through in the back and then the dual entrances. So it has been a lot of head scratching, but I think from a safety standpoint, that was our number one concern, not only for the city, but also for the customers, the patrons. So I think it's a good design, and it was a challenge, but I think we put together a good plan.
Well, then, thank you. Anything else from staff?
No, I think at least we're clear on the issue of the entrances. I think we'll probably try to consolidate your thoughts with regard to architecture and see if we can come up with something. But I think we got some work we can do.
It'd be interesting to see a comparison also of the Glendale location. I do remember that being built. The next meeting is Monday, October 26th, so we won't be meeting for a while, but many of us are on the policy subcommittee, and that will be meeting sooner than that. If that's it, there's a final motion that we need.
Move to adjourn.
Second. A motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you all for your time. Thank you, North Shore, for your interest in our community.